Hey there! Ready for a wild ride? We're diving deep into the heart of Swedish politics today.
Buckle up, because we're about to uncover the tactics and scandals that shaped a pivotal election.
We're talking negative campaigning, media manipulation, and enough twists and turns to rival your favorite political thriller.
And it all goes down in the 2006 Swedish parliamentary elections.
I'm already hooked. So where do we even begin to unpack this political drama?
Our main source is a fascinating 2009 research paper by John Selstedt and Tony Zahari.
And what makes this particular election stand out? Was it especially brutal?
It was a real turning point in Swedish politics.
How so?
Well, the lines between the left and right blocs were becoming increasingly blurred, you see.
Okay, so voters were less sure about who stood for what.
Exactly, and that made image and public perception absolutely crucial. So it became a battle for the hearts and minds of voters as much as a battle of policies.
Precisely. And what's fascinating is that Selstedt and Zohari didn't just analyze media coverage.
They went straight to the source.
They did. They interviewed representatives from all 7 parties in the parliament, including campaign managers.
Wow, talk about getting the inside scoop.
They also delved into 2 major newspapers, Dagens Nyheter and Aftonbladet, focusing on the 60 days leading up to the election.
That's prime time for campaign shenanigans.
Absolutely, and what they discovered was truly eye-opening.
Give me the highlights. What were some of the juiciest findings?
Well, one of the most striking findings was the sheer volume of negativity, especially directed at the left bloc.
How bad are we talking?
Get this. Over 75% of the negative press coverage was aimed at them, particularly the Social Democrats.
Ouch. And they were the incumbent government at the time, right?
Exactly. It's like they had a target on their back.
So why were the Social Democrats singled out so aggressively? Was it just a case of time for a change?
There's a political theory, the Duellist theory, which suggests that the frontrunner in any race becomes the main target.
Makes sense. Everyone wants to take down the champ.
Precisely. But the Social Democrats were also already grappling with a series of scandals.
Oh, right. I vaguely remember hearing about this. What were some of the scandals?
There were allegations of corruption, and they face a lot of criticism for their handling of the 2004 tsunami relief efforts.
So they were already on shaky ground, and then the media piled on.
Exactly. It created this perfect storm of negative perception that was really hard to shake off.
And you know what they say about first impressions in politics?
It's nearly impossible to reverse a negative image once it takes hold in the public's mind.
So the Social Democrats were already facing an uphill battle, but it sounds like things were about to get a whole lot worse for them. So the Social Democrats were already on shaky ground, then the media piled on, and suddenly they're drowning in negative press.
It was a perfect storm, and meanwhile, the right bloc, the alliance, they saw an opportunity and they seized it.
They weren't just going to sit back and watch the Social Democrats self-destruct.
Not at all. They were actively shaping the narrative, and they were good at it.
Okay, so they weren't just lucky. They had a plan.
Oh, absolutely. They went all in on negative campaigning, much more so than the Social Democrats.
Like they'd been taking notes and were ready to play hardball.
Exactly. They employed a much higher volume of attack ads, and their strategies were far more sophisticated.
So they were strategic with their attacks. How so?
They were very clever about where they placed their ads, for example.
Oh, really? Tell me more about that. Where were they focusing their efforts?
They concentrated almost exclusively on Aftonbladet.
That's the one known for being a bit more, shall we say, sensationalist.
Exactly. It was a very deliberate move.
So they were targeting a specific audience with their message.
Precisely. They were going after a less politically engaged readership, the kind of people who might be swayed by more emotionally driven messaging.
Fascinating. So the alliance is playing 4D chess while the Social Democrats are stuck playing checkers. What kind of things were the alliance actually saying in these attack ads?
Well, they used a mix of tactics. They directly attacked some of the Social Democrats' key policies, but they also used more subtle techniques. They used a lot of what's called negative image advertising. It's about creating a negative perception of your opponent rather than just attacking their policies.
Interesting. So it's less about the specifics and more about the overall feeling.
Exactly. They wanted voters to see the Social Democrats as tired, out of touch, and of course, tainted by those scandals we talked about.
It's like they were trying to make the Social Democrats synonymous with scandal in the minds of voters.
Precisely. And remember, this was all playing out against a backdrop of genuine scandals, so it wasn't a hard sell for them.
It's like they were adding fuel to a fire that was already burning.
And it worked. The Social Democrats' attempts at negative campaigning, on the other hand, Well, let's just say they weren't quite as effective.
Oh, yeah. Did they even try to fight back?
They did, but their efforts were nowhere near as sophisticated or as well executed.
Any memorable fails?
Oh, do you remember the werewolf ad?
The one where the Social Democrats' youth branch portrayed the moderate party leader Frederick Reinfeldt as a werewolf.
That's the one, and it totally backfired.
I bet. Talk about a miscalculation.
It came across as childish and desperate, and it ended up reflecting poorly on the Social Democrats.
It's like they brought a knife to a gunfight.
Exactly.
Mm.
It just goes to show that negative campaigning, while potentially effective, requires a deep understanding of your audience and a certain finesse in your execution.
It seems like the alliance understood that, while the Social Democrats, well, maybe they didn't get the memo.
That's certainly an interesting case study in how to run and how not to run a negative campaign.
It makes you wonder, though, how much of this was about the actual campaigns and how much was about the media's role in all of this.
Ah, yes, the media's role. That's a whole other layer of complexity in this story.
Right, because it's not like the media is just passively reporting on events. They're shaping the narrative, choosing what to focus on, how to frame it.
Absolutely. They have a huge influence on how the public perceives these political battles.
And in this case, it sounds like their coverage might have amplified those negative perceptions of the Social Democrats.
Oh, absolutely. The way they covered those scandals, keeping them in the headlines, framing them in a negative light, it undoubtedly played a role in shaping public opinion.
It's like they were holding a magnifying glass over all of the Social Democrats' flaws, making them seem even bigger and more damning.
Exactly. And that's a crucial point for any voter to remember, especially in today's world.
We have to be critical consumers of media because what we read, what we see, it can have a real impact on how we view candidates and ultimately how we vote. So we've got these scandals, we've got this relentless negative campaigning, and then we've got the media fanning the flames.
It was a recipe for disaster, and it really highlights the power of perception in politics.
Because even if the scandals were exaggerated or taken out of context, the damage was done.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that this was all happening just as social media was starting to emerge as a force in politics.
Yes, the early days of Facebook and Twitter when everyone thought it was just a fad.
Right. But even then, you could see the potential for this new technology to completely change the game.
In what way?
Imagine being able to see in real time how voters were reacting to every speech, every attack at every little scandal.
It's like having a giant focus group at your fingertips, constantly giving you feedback.
Precisely. But most parties back then, including the Social Democrats, they weren't quite there yet.
They were still stuck in the old ways of doing things.
To a certain extent, yes.
Relying on polls and focus groups, which take time and don't always capture the nuances of public opinion.
Exactly. And the researchers suggest that this inability to adapt to the speed and volume of information in the digital age may have cost the Social Democrats dearly.
So, while the alliance was using these new tools to fine-tune their message and target specific voters,
The Social Democrats were basically flying blind, unable to keep up with the narrative.
it's like they brought a slingshot to a tank battle.
A perfect analogy. And it underscores a crucial point for any political party in today's world.
What's that?
You can't just react. You have to anticipate. You have to be agile. You have to be constantly shaping your message and managing your reputation in real time.
Because the court of public opinion is always in session.
Exactly. And that makes you wonder, in today's world of 24/7 news cycles and social media firestorms, is it even possible for a party to truly control its own narrative? Or has that power shifted entirely to the hands of the public?
It's a question that keeps me up at night. We've seen how quickly narratives can shift, how easily perceptions can be manipulated.
It's a whole new ballgame, and the rules are constantly changing.
Well, on that slightly unsettling note, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
It certainly gives us a lot to think about.
It does. Thanks for joining us as we explored the murky world of negative campaigning, media influence, and the power of perception in shaping political outcomes. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay engaged.